And I think the most important thing, what really trips up a lot of advisors, is they don't know how to ask a client to be on an advisory council. And we have scripts for that to make it
we
really
thought of
easy.
everything. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Framework Podcast. I'm your host, Trujillo Limón, and this month on Framework, we're talking about creating a world-class client experience. And I'm really excited to have Sarah Cain, the VP of Carson Coaching, here with me to talk about the topic. Sarah, welcome to the show, and thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me, Anna. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one. This is a really important topic. And I just wanted to first get, your take on what even is a world-class client experience? What is the definition of it in your estimation?
Yeah, that's a vague one, right? To me, when I'm talking to advisors about that world-class client experience or whatever you really want to call it, I mean, going beyond just the basics of delivering what your clients expect and making them feel special and like they matter and delighting them so that they can't wait to talk about you. And so that can mean a lot of different things, but it's an overall kind of feeling that your client's going to have in their interactions with you.
And Sarah, I'm curious, just from your own personal perspective, some anecdotal evidence, what some a recent experience maybe with a business or a firm or somebody that you've dealt with recently where you've had what you define as a world-class client experience?
So earlier this week, I had a tooth extracted. And I am not saying that financial planning is as bad as having a tooth pulled.
Sometimes it
probably feels like it. But going into it, I had a lot of anxiety. I had talked to a lot of people and had heard everything from really bad experiences to really good ones. And so I went into this and I found this oral surgeon practice, and they were fabulous. Everyone there made me feel so comfortable. And when I told them that I was anxious about the procedure, they were like, oh, no worries, everyone is, and we do this all the time. And the surgeon was great at the consult, and we ended up doing sedation for the procedure. So I don't remember a darn thing about it, but I do remember that overall it felt great, and they've been fabulous in their post-op and everything else. So something that was so anxiety inducing to me actually made me feel good. And now I'm telling everyone, if you ever have to have a tooth extracted, which I hope you don't, you should go here, right? Same thing with whether it's a restaurant you love or somewhere else. Where do you have such a good experience and you feel so good that you can't wait to tell other people about it?
Yeah. And you see, it's interesting on Google reviews, for example, they just opened up a nice Asian fusion restaurant down the street. And I live in the suburbs. There's not a lot of really nice restaurants around us. And it's I don't know, nothing within walking distance, right? But this is a nice restaurant within less than a mile from my house. We could walk to it. And it was so delicious. The service was so good that I went on Google right away and just wrote a review. This place is great. I'm telling everybody about it. They gave us these coupons, right? So I'm passing out my coupons to people. And so it's interesting to see elements of client experience or whatever, customer experience on Google for businesses that are not financial services. And you brought up a really good point there. It's this is scary for a lot of people to have somebody diving into their finances. It's very personal. People feel kind of shame sometimes. It is like a tooth extraction. For me, I'm one of those people where I'm I would rather get a tooth extraction.
Again, anxiety inducing for people, right? When we're talking about money and finances. So client experience is really, really important in these situations.
For sure. So let's talk about why focusing on this topic, creating a great client experience, is a differentiator for firms out there.
Well, I mean, getting back to the tooth thing, right? Any number of dentists and oral surgeons can pull a tooth. But my experience is going to be very different. There are so many financial advisors out there who can do the basic financial planning work or investment management work. They might be extremely smart, right? But if you don't make your client feel good and excited about taking action towards their goals and their future and what's important to them, they're not going to take action. And so we know that. But B, it's just, you're not going to have that same level of client experience that a firm across the street who really cares about your client does and is going above and beyond to make them feel special, like they matter, and helping them to achieve their goals and really being that partner. Client experience is a lot in coming alongside your client and just being that partner to help them get where they want to go.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it might be a common problem where people might think, oh, my client experience is good enough. It's good enough. I don't need it. So let's dive into a little bit about how can we help advisors overcome that good enough mindset when it comes to this topic?
I was thinking about this, Anna, and it's funny because most of the people who actually come to coaching don't have, complacent mindsets. Mm-hmm. They do want to get better. That's why they're coming to coaching. So most of the time I don't see someone who says, oh, I'm good enough. Okay. They just don't know what they don't know. Right. And so they think they have a really good client experience because they don't know what else other advisory firms are doing. Mm-hmm. And so that's where just kind of giving them some awareness, talking about what other firms are doing and talking them through what is possible opens their eyes. And again, these people, they love their clients. They love what they do. They want to do a great job. And so they just need a little bit of awareness, and then they get inspired to take action.
Yeah. So speaking of awareness, we have a really great course, right? About 10 components of a world-class client experience. So what are those 10 components and how can they work together as a framework? And I'm taking too many questions. Let's talk about the components and how they work together first, and then I'll dive into the next one.
Okay. So I just a little bit of background here. When I started coaching at Carson, I would talk to advisors all the time that said, oh yeah, next year, one of my goals is to improve my client experience. Mm-hmm. And I'd be like, great. So what does that mean? What are you going to do? And they couldn't really tell me. They just knew that they wanted a better client experience. Mm-hmm. And what I found is it was really helpful to have a framework of specifics and categories so that we could dive deep and get specific about, okay, this is a meaningful action we're going to take, a specific thing that we are going to do that will impact our client experience, make it better. And so once I put together this 10 components framework, and maybe there's 11 or 14 or I don't know, right? But these are the 10 that I came up with and have worked really well. It made these conversations so much easier, and it made planning easier for these advisory firms because you can dive deep. So to kind of read through the 10 components, just so everyone knows what we're talking about.
All right, take out your notebooks, guys.
Yeah.
Start taking notes.
The first one is a service model. And so that's essentially how you deliver, right? And what you deliver, the service. Number 2 is the onboarding experience. Number 3 is reviews. Number 4 is appreciation. 5 is communication. 6 is technology. 7 is education. 8 is service. 9 is feedback. And 10 is environment. So those are the 10 that I outlined. And, most of the time when I talk to people about client experience, the 2 that come up most, people think of client service, mm-hmm. and they think of technology. And that's just what we think of. But there's really so many areas that touch our clients that we want to make sure that we're being mindful and intentional around. So those are the 10 components. And I forgot where we were going from here, Anna. So what was the next question?
Yeah. So I cut myself off. So I haven't shared it yet, but what is like of the 10 components, what is the one that advisors most often overlook? And why do you think that is?
Okay. So I'm going to give you 2 answers here. Okay. The first one is environment. Mm-hmm. And I think that gets overlooked a lot because the human brain gets used to things, right? And so maybe you have a crack in the tile in your entryway of your mm-hmm. office, right? Or you have a spider web, or there's something else, right? We have this happen in our house. If something's crooked and we're like, oh yeah, I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to that. Yep. Over time, we just kind of become blind to it. Mm-hmm. We don't even notice it, right? And that happens a lot in the environment. And so that actually gets overlooked quite a bit in advisory firms. And that's a pretty simple fix. Have someone that you trust to be honest with you, just come in and give you a look around, right? What works? Is parking accessible, or is it a pain, right? Mm-hmm. Do you have cracked tiles? Do you have things that look outdated? Do you have dust on your blinds? All of these things that someone with fresh eyes definitely sees. So that's an easy one that is overlooked a lot. The other one that I think is overlooked a lot is the client onboarding experience. And I think people kind of deep down know that it matters, but they're not really sure what to do or how to make it better. They're just like, sign paperwork and then schedule their next review. But really, onboarding is so important because if you have an amazing onboarding experience for your client, it's what welcomes them in and confirms that they made the right decision in deciding on you to be their financial advisor.
Yeah, I love that. Going back to the environment, I was just on the phone with Tammy Bryanbach, who's another one of our amazing coaches in Carson Coaching. And I was telling her that I have a friend coming to town this week. And so I'm like, you don't notice the things about your house until you're like, oh no, they're going to see that new stuff on my wall. But that type of stuff, like, so pretend like, you have somebody coming in to visit, or like you said, have somebody, because you do get blind to that stuff. And you're like, wow, how long has it been since I've needed to fix that gash in the wall, behind the door. So I love it. So you mentioned onboarding, and a lot of firms struggle with that. So let's dive a little bit deeper into what are your tips for turning that onboarding experience into something really great that clients just feel so good about their decision.
Yeah. So I think the onboarding experience is something that you should have a process for. It doesn't stop at the time that they sign the paperwork. It starts then, right? That is frequent communication about what's going on with the transfer of their account, right? So that they know that it's in process, that you're on top of it, that you're watching it. If you're making trades, you're letting them know. It's that proactive communication. It's introducing them to the team that will be serving them. It's making them feel welcome, whether that's through some small gift or taking them out to dinner, introducing them to other clients. I have some advisors who have kind of a year in the life of a client document that they share with people to kind of say, here's what you can expect. It puts people at ease. It makes them know that you are on top of things and that you're going to take care of them. And that's really what they need to know during that initial onboarding experience.
Yeah, that reminds me a little bit about, and bear with me while I get to the point here. Like when you have a cell phone company, right? They've lured you over with all of these great deals. We're going to, and then you kind of like, it stops, like all the good things stop eventually after you're a new customer, and then they start focusing on their new customers, right? So let's talk a little bit about the importance of, how advisors can ensure that they have that proactive communication, especially during like challenging times, to kind of make them feel that like, new client, I'm special. I'm a new, how can they make them feel that throughout the journey with them?
Yeah. So, with market downturns, I always tell advisors, we know it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, right? So we should be prepared for when a market downturn happens. You have your investment philosophy. Hopefully you've been educating your clients about that over time. You've been talking to them about what happens when a market downturn occurs. Again, this gets back to that education component, right? We're being proactive about the education. So at that time, you're reminding them, you're just reaching out to clients, reminding them they're going to be okay. You have a process, you have a philosophy. You are not surprised by this. Even when the COVID downturn happened, we did not plan for a downturn to happen because of a global pandemic.
Who does?
But the advisors we work with knew that a downturn was possible. They've been preparing their clients. They immediately reached out with emails, with phone calls, just letting clients know, hey, I get this can be scary. We're on top of it. If you want to talk, I'm here, but here's what we're doing. Just know it's going to be okay. That's what clients want to know. Am I going to be okay?
Yep. Love it. So you mentioned earlier about technology being, important, or what people think of when they think of client experience. And like, we're so used to just like such really fast technology and things integrating in our lives. And right. So with that lens in mind, that's what clients are used to. How can, advisors kind of make sure that their technology creates that modern and effective kind of client experience that they're used to?
Yeah. Think about every way that your clients are going to interact or have a touch point with you. And then think about, is there a way that we can leverage technology to make it easier and more seamless and more convenient for our clients? Honest to goodness, if I try to work with someone who makes me call them to schedule an appointment anymore, it drives me bonkers.
Like, immediate no for me.
Right? I'm busy during the day, during your office hours, right? Can I just do it at night when I'm thinking about it? So that's, simple things like that, that we forget are so important. I think most of us love the idea of Zoom meetings, having some sort of a tech virtual component to meetings is really helpful. Think about, what questions are your clients going to have come up between meetings, and how can you be answering those proactively and in an easy way for your clients? What are they wondering about, right? And there's so many ways with a client portal that they can be looking at their accounts, their financial plan. If they're up at night, because that's what we do, right? We think about something late at night, and we want to know how a potential idea we have or expense or something else is going to affect our plan. Can your client go in and play around with that? Can they at least go in and schedule a meeting with you? Or do they have to remember to call you first thing in the morning and then get on your appointment and get in to see you? So tech is so important. I can't cover everything here, obviously, Anna, but I think that's just one of those things. We've got to sit down and think through every touch point that the client has and think about what's possible here. What could we use?
For sure. That when you talk about the calling, my sister is out of town for a few weeks. And so my mom and I have been tag teaming, caring for my nephew, and he's 15, so he doesn't need a whole lot of care, but he has this, he looks just like Miguel from the Cobra Kai series, right? He's tall. He has that same haircut, and he wants to get his hair done. So he was like, we're both tag teaming finding a barber, and I found a really cool one, but they didn't have an online portal to schedule the appointments. I'm like, nope. So he found a totally different one that's further away, but that's the one he wants to go to. But to that point, this business lost a potential new client because they didn't have something that we could schedule while we're doing his homework during dinner time. We had to call them. And so I'm like, no, immediate no. So yeah, there's that. And then the second point, so this wasn't on the list, but just, the meeting notes and the AI and being able to use the meeting, from a platform like Zox, for example. At Carson, we recently partnered with Zox. It's designed specifically for financial advisors to use. And, Danny Fava said in several podcast interviews and several presentations at Excel that this will really help save time for the advisors and really help them with that proactive communication. Have you heard any feedback from your members or people, your advisors you're coaching, about those types of, AI integrations and using them for a better client experience?
Yeah. I mean, obviously it's huge in the back office and time savings and everything else. But I also am hearing how much the clients appreciate better notes than most advisors take on their own. And so I think that's a huge way that AI can improve the client experience there too.
And then being able to have a list of to-dos. I know me, I'm kind of like a nutty professor. Sometimes I'll be like, oh yeah, I'll remember that. And no, I will not. So those AI tools have been really helpful for me because they tell me here's your to-do list potentially because of, this meeting you had. Yeah. So I love that as a non-advisor person. It's really helping me with my life and getting stuff done. So let's shift a little bit and talk about the role of education in terms of finances and things that might be top of mind for people. Earlier, you talked about what questions might be on your clients' minds between meetings. How can you kind of take that information and use it to educate clients about certain aspects of their finances? And what role does that play in kind of building the relationships and building the trust between the advisor and the client?
Yeah. Think about if you're going to work with a doctor. Do you have more trust and confidence and a better relationship in one that holds everything and doesn't tell you an answer unless, you ask that specific question? Or do you have a better relationship with a doctor who is helping you understand what's going on and what potential causes could be and how you can be healthier and is being proactive in all of that education and communication with you, right? It's always better with the more education, not overdoing it, obviously. But that right level of education and communication helps build trust, right? It establishes you as an expert and that you care about your clients, right? And that you see them as a very capable human being, right? Which all of them are. They may not love doing finances, which is why they're hiring you, but they're very capable and very smart. And so let's build that relationship. Let's be transparent. Let's educate them on the things that are going to impact them and what actions they could be taking to make smarter decisions. If you know that you're getting these questions all the time when people hit milestones, man, how can we be proactive about that and sending out a blog post or a video like, hey, I know you're getting ready to, think about your 401k elections for the coming year. Like, let's talk about this, right? There's so many things that you can do in being proactive. And I think also in kind of a one-to-many approach that helps you save time as well.
For sure. And that evergreen content too, like stuff that continually comes up every year, like that's always good. And I'm a big fan of creating a piece of content that you could refresh and reuse over and over again, because just infusing some new newsworthy stuff that might be top of mind for client. That's a really great way to do that. So I love that. So let's talk a little bit about feedback. So we're big on like client advisory councils and things like that. But tell us, what are some of the best ways for advisors to get feedback from their clients to then in turn make a better client experience for all?
Yeah. This is one of those things when I tell advisors, you don't know what your client experience is really like because you're not a client and you're not experiencing it. So we have to ask the experts, who are your clients. Surveys have been around in our industry for a long time, and I don't think there's anything wrong with surveys. I think it can be helpful to kind of get a pulse point or figure out where you need to dive deeper or see if there's a big, potential problem out there. But for the most part, I don't know that most advisors are going to get really juicy, actionable information from a client survey. That's why we're such big proponents of the Client Advisory Council, where you can dig in and have that one-on-one, one-to small group interaction and dig deeper with your questions and find out what's working and what's not working. And I know, people have had different experiences with client advisory councils. I always tell people it's how you execute them, right? And it's the kind of questions that you ask. If you don't ask good questions, you're not going to get very useful answers. But if you are prepared, and of course we have all of this because we've been doing it for so long at Carson Coaching, we have everything that advisors need to execute well on this. If you execute it well, you are going to get a wealth of information about how you can improve your client experience, but also those clients love you. They turn into your biggest advocates. So that's a huge way to get good feedback on your client experience.
So tell me, what are some of your favorite resources for the client, for client advisory councils that advisors could kind of check out on our Carson Coaching platform?
Yeah. So number one, we have information on who you should invite, because who you should invite is so important. Again, that gets back to if you ask good questions, right? Those things are really, really important. We have a list of sample questions and agenda items that should be on there. Again, very helpful. We have a checklist of what you should be doing when to prepare for an advisory council. All of this is very important. And I think the most important thing, what really trips up a lot of advisors, is they don't know how to ask a client to be on an advisory council. And we have scripts for that to make it
we
really
thought of
easy.
Everything.
So, that's, again, get started, right? And don't go in thinking that your first advisory council is going to be perfect. Although I will tell you, you will probably be very pleasantly surprised. But go in there and just be ready and open to learn.
Awesome. I don't know if y'all could hear that, but my dog, he wants to be part of the podcast today. So he's barking, trying to get in on this great action. So he's not creating a great client experience for our listeners right now, I'll tell you what.
I could have a conversation with Blue. I'd be fine with it.
Yeah, he does. He likes to talk a lot. So yeah, stay tuned to if you don't follow us on LinkedIn, please do. We have a really great newsletter that goes out every month that kind of just packages all of that stuff together, all of those resources, not all of them, but we'll share one every month that you can download to make your client experience a little bit better. And speaking of that, when advisors might be starting out or they have limited resources, what are the things that they should focus on first when it comes to creating a good client experience that's kind of not as resource intensive?
Yeah. I sit down and we have an action plan that has each one of these 10 components, and just sit down with you, your team, and figure out what are some kind of low-hanging fruit areas that would be quick to implement, cheap to implement, right? All of those are really easy. Things like communication are typically easy to implement because you already have the systems, right? You have the email, you have the CRM. You just need to have a plan for communicating with your clients. And once you have that, then you can start writing what needs to go out at each one of those times. It's kind of, I don't want to say set it and forget it, but it becomes very process oriented. So if you don't have a really good communication schedule and system, that's an easy one to implement. As I mentioned, environment, again, an easy way to have someone come in and give you a few pointers for, like, you could upgrade this, make this look better, clean this, whatever, right? There are typically things that are just so easy that we overlook them. So it just, sometimes takes an outsider's eye.
For sure. Yeah. Don't rely on your own eye. And like you said earlier, blind to some of those things that, clients just might be kind of about. Yep. So I love it. So, say, client or advisors have embarked on this journey of creating a better client experience. How can they regularly evaluate and kind of implement improvements over time?
Yeah. This is something that I recommend firms do at least on a semi-annual basis, where, twice a year they're getting together with their team as part of their regular planning. And they're just kind of doing an assessment and an evaluation of their client experience. What have we been hearing from clients? Where could we improve? Or we heard this new technology or whatever it may be. And you get together and you prioritize the ways that you can be intentional about improving that client experience. You don't have to do all at once. The idea is you just don't want it, to go 5 years without making any improvements. If you do incremental changes every 3 to 6 months, that is going to add up and you're going to see a huge improvement in that experience over time.
Yeah. Small steps, right? Small steps to get you there too. Love it. So Sarah, if you could give one actionable piece of advice for delivering a world-class client experience to our listeners, what would that be? Like, get something to get started. I guess you kind of draw from your last answer, but something to kind of get started today.
I think that one piece of advice on it would be to be intentional. Mm-hmm. Don't just let it happen. Don't just think that you're good. Continually being out there seeking ways to improve and have an intentional schedule for making improvements. And, again, go back to your clients. They're your experts and find out from them what could make it better.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. So stay tuned to our LinkedIn. Again, we're going to be sharing some resources for you to be able to go to your clients and ask for that feedback, some scripts and things like that. So Sarah, as we start to wind down, or as we wind down, actually, is there anything I didn't ask that you would like to include that you think our listeners should know?
Oh, that's such a good question, Anna. I think involve your team. It doesn't have to be all about you, the leader, the advisor, right? You would be amazed at the incredible ideas your team is going to have for you about ways to improve the client experience. So involve the team in the evaluation, in the planning, and you will not regret it.
Awesome. That's wonderful. Well, thank you, Sarah, for making some time for me today and for our listeners of Framework. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Anna. Have a good one.
And thank you, everybody else, for tuning into this episode of Framework. Please subscribe so you don't miss another episode, and have a great week ahead.